The soft hum of conveyor belts and clattering plastic bins echoed through JFK Airport's Terminal 4. It was just after 7:30 a.m., and already the security checkpoint snaked with tired travelers clutching passports, phones, and half-finished coffees. Among them, Elena Morris waited patiently, her grip tight on the frayed strap of a navy duffel bag. Her movements were calm, composed, but her eyes told a different story. Alert, wary, watching everything. She wore no makeup. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled into a low bun, tucked under a dark wool cap. She might have passed as someone's aunt heading to a family reunion, unremarkable, quiet, which was exactly how she liked it. When her turn came, Elena stepped forward without hesitation. She removed her shoes, her coat, and the slim leather belt around her waist. She placed her laptop in a separate tray, like she'd done 100 times before. Then she gently laid her duffel bag on the conveyor belt. A young TSA officer, barely 25, with a buzz-cut and bored expression, eyed the bag. It was old, stained along the edges, the kind of bag that had seen more bus terminals than hotel rooms. He gave it a half-hearted nudge with his gloved hand. "Ma'am, is this your only bag?" "Yes," Elena said softly. "Any electronics, batteries, or sharp objects inside?" "No." The belt jerked to life, carrying her belongings toward the scanner. Elena moved forward and stepped into the body scanner, arms raised briefly before she was waved through. As she reached the other side, she looked toward her bag. It hadn't come through yet. Behind the monitor, TSA Agent Mallory Jenkins stared at the screen. Something caught her eye, a metallic object tucked deep inside the duffel. Not a knife, not a gun, but strange. It had structure, symmetry, like an old military pin or a badge. Mallory frowned and waved over her supervisor. "Pull that bag," she said firmly. Within seconds, the conveyor stopped. Another officer grabbed Elena's bag and tossed it into a gray bin with a thud. The loud sound made nearby passengers glance up. Elena's heart skipped. She didn't move. Her eyes followed the bin carefully. "Ma'am, step aside, please," the officer said, motioning toward the secondary screening table. Elena's voice stayed steady. "Is there a problem?" "We just need to take a closer look at your belongings." She nodded and stepped aside without protest. Her breath caught briefly in her throat. She'd planned every step of this trip, mapped it out to the minute. She was cautious, but she hadn't expected them to be so careless. That bag held more than clothes and toiletries. The officer unzipped the bag in full view, rummaging through layers of clothing before pulling out a small, wrapped velvet pouch. It looked old, elegant, out of place in the bag. His brow furrowed. "What is this?" "It's personal," Elena said quickly, her tone still calm. He ignored her and opened it. The moment the silver emblem inside caught the overhead light, he froze. It was a circular medallion, engraved with a hawk gripping lightning bolts. No visible text, just the chilling clarity of its detail. It wasn't something sold in stores. It was official, military, and rare. He leaned in, squinting. Then he whispered to his colleague, who looked down and visibly recoiled. One of them reached for his radio dot. Elena stayed still, her fingers twitching at her sides. She knew what was happening now. They weren't just confused, they recognized it. Within minutes, the security line stalled behind her. 2 uniformed officers arrived. People were watching. Phones started to come out. One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us." Elena gave one final look to her bag, now wide open on the table, and nodded silently. Whatever she'd been running from, it had finally caught up. Asterisk, the narrow interview room in the back of Terminal 4 smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. The walls were beige, bare, except for a clock that ticked louder than it should. Elena Morris sat on a metal chair, her duffel bag placed carefully on the table in front of her. She stared at it not with fear, but with quiet calculation. The emblem had been removed, now held somewhere else. She knew what came next. 2 TSA supervisors sat across from her, flanked by a uniformed airport officer. They asked for her name, her ID, her purpose of travel. She handed over her passport without hesitation. Eleni Ward. It read a name she'd used for the past 3 years. Fake, but professionally crafted. Every detail checked out. Still, the emblem had complicated things. The older officer leaned forward. "We found something in your bag. We'd like to know where you got it." Elena met his eyes. "It's a keepsake." He narrowed his eyes. "It's not just any keepsake, ma'am. That insignia belonged to a classified military intelligence division, a unit officially decommissioned in 2009. Elena gave a small, tired smile. "You seem to know a lot for a transportation officer." He didn't smile back. "I'm ex-military. I've seen it before. That emblem isn't something a civilian just stumbles across." Silence hung heavy for a moment. Elena adjusted slightly in her seat. Her body ached more than it used to. She wasn't young anymore, but her mind? Still sharp. Still dangerous, if it needed to be. She leaned forward and spoke calmly. "I'm not a civilian." That stopped him. Before he could respond, the door creaked open, and 2 men in suits stepped in, flashing Department of Homeland Security badges. They barely looked at the others before turning their attention to her. "Elena Morris," one of them said. "Not Ms. Ward." So they knew. The agent's tone softened, but only slightly. "You disappeared in 2012. Last known address was in Virginia. You were presumed dead after the burning rock leaks. And now here you are, with a symbol no one's seen in over a decade." Elena exhaled slowly. She hadn't expected to be found this easily, but she supposed it was inevitable. That emblem always carried a signal like a beacon buried in silver. She knew someone would be watching for it. She just hoped it would take longer. "Why now?" the agent asked. "Why come back?" She hesitated. The truth wasn't simple. The truth never was. But she knew she couldn't stall forever. "Not anymore. My commanding officer," she began quietly, "died in the Kandahar breach. Before he did, he gave me the emblem. And something else, something that proves what our division was really doing." She nodded toward the bag. "It's still inside. You haven't found it yet." The younger agent looked puzzled. "We scanned everything." "No," Elena said. "You scanned what I allowed you to find." For a brief moment, there was a flicker of respect in the older agent's eyes. She continued, "I kept silent for 13 years. I moved cities, changed names, erased every trace of myself. But the things we buried, they're starting to resurface. People are disappearing again. Data is being erased. And the people behind it, they were never held accountable." The room felt colder now. The agents exchanged a look. I came to D. C. to finish what we started, Elena said. "And I'm not the only one." The air buzzed with tension. The agents asked more questions about the drive, about who else might have evidence. But Elena was done talking, for now. She knew that. Once they opened the secret compartment in her bag, they would realize this was bigger than one woman resurfacing. This was the beginning of a reckoning. The air in the DHS field office, 2 floors above the terminal, was chilled, stale. Alana sat with her hands folded, steady and patient, while the agents buzzed in and out of the adjacent room. Through the frosted glass, she could see them huddled. Around her duffel bag, now opened completely under harsh fluorescent light. A forensic tech was running gloved fingers along the seams. She'd been here before interrogation rooms, surveillance rooms, sealed buildings that reeked of paranoia. And secrets. She had once belonged to this world. Before she became a threat to it. And now she was back inside it. Agent Marlowe, the older of the two who had picked her up, returned with something in his hand. The velvet pouch, only this time, its contents weren't hidden. The silver emblem rested in his palm, gleaming under the lights, its intricate design unmistakable. A sharp-eyed hawk clutching lightning bolts, the wings wrapped around a shield. It looked like an ordinary medal to most. But Elena knew better. Marlowe set it on the table between them. "Tell me exactly where you got this." "I told you," Elena said, her voice even. "It was given to me by Commander Rourke before he died. In Kandahar, March 2009. Marlowe's jaw tightened. That name hit something. "Rourke was declared Mia," he said slowly. "Body never found. The entire operation was wiped from records." Everyone assumed. "They were supposed to assume that," Elena interrupted. "It was cleaner that way." Marlowe looked down at the emblem again. "I haven't seen this since I was a kid. My father wore it before he retired. He never talked about what it meant. Said it was a different kind of service." He looked back up at her. "What exactly was your unit?" Elena paused, then answered. "We weren't officially anything. No insignia, no chain of command past Rourke. We were ghost operations. We handled information gathering, intercepting, suppression. Not just overseas, domestic too. After 9/11s, a lot of things blurred." Marlowe stared at her, the color draining slightly from his face. "You're saying you were spying on Americans?" "Not at first," she said softly. "But the lines moved, and when I tried to report it, they moved again." The second agent, Agent Connor, stepped in from the hall. He held a small flash drive between his fingers, charcoal black, barely the size of a knuckle. "We found this in the bag lining," he said, "stitched behind a false seam." Elena gave a faint nod. "That's what matters." Connor raised an eyebrow. "It's encrypted." "You won't break it on your own," she said. "It needs 2 passcodes. Mine and someone else's. Someone who vanished a long time ago." Marlowe sat back, his mind racing. "What's on it?" "Proof," she said. "Not just of what we did, but of who ordered it. The real names. The programs that were never declassified. Because they were never classified to begin with." Connor looked at her, the weight of her words beginning to settle. "If this is what you say it is, why bring it now?" Elena looked toward the window, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because the people who buried this, they're starting to dig again. And if we don't expose them now, they'll rewrite everything." The agents were silent. Outside the room, phones were already ringing. Someone had escalated the discovery. Faces were appearing on screens. The emblem was now in the system, triggering recognition protocols the public didn't even know existed. Elena knew this was only the beginning. That emblem, the very thing they once swore to protect in secret, was now lighting up alarms across Washington. And somewhere out there, the people who feared it most had just realized it was back. Asterisk, the room had changed. What began as a casual security hold had evolved into a fully classified detainment. Elena now sat in a secured federal facility just outside Manhattan, her duffel bag replaced by clean water and a clipboard filled with waivers she refused to sign. The agents Marlowe and Connor had shifted too. Their initial suspicion had given way to something far more complex, a mixture of professional unease and personal doubt. Elena had crossed into a space most never returned from the territory between patriot and threat. Agent Connor leaned against the wall while Marlowe took a seat across from her again. His demeanor was quieter now, less confrontational, more calculating. The emblem sat once more on the table, but this time it was treated like a relic, reverent in its silence. Marlowe cleared his throat. The encryption on the drive isn't just government grade, it's old agency style. Prism. That's Cold War technique. Some of our systems can't even read it. Elena gave a small nod. That was the point. And the second passcode? Connor asked. She looked up at them both. It belongs to Michael Heron. Connor blinked. Heron died in 2013. Car explosion. They never found a body. Exactly, Elena said. Because he's not dead. Marlowe's face paled. Michael Heron had once been listed as an off-book asset, the kind no one ever officially knew existed. He was rumored to be the brain behind several Black Ops counterintelligence systems, including the AI-integrated surveillance that the public later learned about during the Snowden leaks. His death had always been too clean, too quiet. He and I buried the drive, Elena continued, separately, with different access points. If one of us didn't make it, the other couldn't activate it alone. I had to wait until I was sure he'd surface again. Marlowe leaned forward. And now? Elena reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She laid it on the table. An address. A small coastal town in Oregon. He sent this to me 3 weeks ago. One line. The sky's not clear anymore. That was our signal. He's ready. Connor stared at the paper as if it might burn through. The table. Do you have any idea what this means? If what's on that drive gets out, you're talking indictments. Global surveillance ops compromised. Directors. Cabinet members. Maybe even, I know exactly what it means, Elena interrupted. That's why I didn't leak it. Not yet. I came to DC to make the right people look. Because if this goes public the wrong way, chaos won't be an accident. It'll be weaponized. Marlowe rubbed his face, the weight of the situation finally pressing down. You're asking us to help you blow open a decade of buried intelligence. That's treason from where we sit. No, Elena said firmly. What's treason is letting the people who broke the law rewrite history and retire rich. What I'm asking you to do is help make it right. There was a knock on the door. A young staffer entered and handed Connor a tablet. He scanned it, his expression hardening. We've got chatter. Someone picked up the emblem on surveillance AI. Langley's watching. And so is someone off network. They knew. Before we did. Elena's jaw tightened. Then we're out of time, she said. Marlowe stood. What are you proposing? She didn't hesitate. You take me to DC. I'll bring the drive. I'll open it. But only if I speak directly to the Oversight Committee off record. I want protection. I want immunity. And I want their word. That they won't disappear me like they did Heron. Connor hesitated. And if we say no? She leaned back, her voice like steel. Then I leak it. Everything. And the truth burns its way out, with or without you. The drive sat between them like a live wire. Inside the unmarked black SUV cutting south through Delaware, Elena rode in the back seat, flanked by agents Marlowe and Connor. She cradled the encrypted USB drive in her gloved palm, her eyes fixed on the passing trees, but her mind miles ahead in DC, in the hearing room, in the chaos her next move might unleash. They'd agreed to her terms mostly. A private session with select members of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. No media, no leaks, no files released yet. But Elena knew better than to believe in clean handovers. Especially not with something this volatile. This better be worth it, Marlowe muttered, glancing back at her. It is, Elena said simply. That's why people have died to keep it hidden. Connor, ever more silent than his partner, turned toward her. You really think exposing this will change anything? Government runs on secrecy. It always has. Elena didn't answer right away. She turned the drive over in her hand. It's not about changing everything. It's about stopping what's starting again. He furrowed his brow. What do you mean? She looked up. 3 months ago, I intercepted a pattern surveillance code tied to Project Eon. It's an off-grid operation, hidden inside an outdated Pentagon server. Same signature as the old program we dismantled in 2009. Only now, it's updated, more aggressive, and targeting domestic dissidents under the guise of anti-terrorism. Same team, same architects, just a new label. Marlowe sat up straighter. You're saying they've reactivated the blacknet? I'm saying they never shut it down, she replied. They just rebranded it, scrubbed the names, and started again with better tools and fewer witnesses. This drive proves it. The car fell into silence. An hour later, they arrived at a government annex on Capitol Hill. Nondescript, with tinted windows and layers of surveillance that watched the watchers. Elena stepped out, her breath shallow. She hadn't been this close to Washington in over a decade. The last time she'd walked into a federal building like this, she had trusted the system. It had nearly killed her. Now, she was here to see if it could be forced to listen. Inside, they were met by a clerk who escorted them through 2 security gates and down a private corridor. At the end, a walnut-paneled conference room with Anne. Oval table and 5 people waiting. Congresswoman Lena Park, chair of the Intelligence Oversight Subcommittee, was among them. A sharp, composed woman, known for grilling both allies and adversaries with the same cold precision. Elena had never met her, but she'd watched hours of her hearings. She was smart, brutal, unpredictable. Double quotes, Miss Morris, Park said, folding her hands. Or should I say Agent Ward? Elena took a seat and set the drive on the table. Let's just stick with Elena. Park nodded. We've reviewed your background, what we could find. Most of it's classified or erased. You claim this drive contains evidence of ongoing surveillance activity in violation of federal law? It does. And you're willing to decrypt it here, for us? Yes. But first, I want your assurance on record that no harm will come to me, or to the person who holds the second key. A pause. Park exchanged a look with the man beside her, Representative Hammond, ex-CIA. He gave a slight nod. You have our word, Park said. Elena pulled out her phone and opened a secure app. After a moment, a message popped up on screen. Skies not clear. Clouds incoming. She smiled faintly. Heron was ready. Elena typed back. Storm code, initiate. Seconds later, the drive's encryption began to blink blue. The second key had been activated remotely. Everyone at the table leaned forward. His folders began opening on the connected laptop. PDFs, video footage, call transcripts, satellite imagery. All time-stamped, all damning. Marlowe exhaled under his breath. My God. Elena's voice cut through the silence. You asked if this was worth it. Let me show you what silence has cost. Asterisk 2 floors beneath the Capitol Annex, the weight of what Elena had revealed thundered through a secure communications room. Analysts whispered in disbelief as they scrolled through years of concealed data. Encrypted messages between federal contractors. Ghost payments routed through fake shell corporations. Drone surveillance maps of private citizens, some of them journalists. Some activists. Some just critics. Every line of code screamed one thing. Project Eon had never died. Upstairs, in the private conference chamber, Congresswoman Park stood frozen, her hand gripping the edge of the table. Even for someone seasoned and classified. Briefings, what she was seeing was staggering. These are recent, she said, her voice hollow. 2023, 2024. There's footage from protests in Baltimore recorded through Defense Intelligence satellites. Elena nodded. They were embedding the program in domestic infrastructure. Traffic cams, social apps, utility grids. The same. Surveillance tools, we were told, were dismantled after the 2010 investigations. They were just buried deeper. Park looked toward Representative Hammond. His face was unreadable, but his clenched fists gave him away. "Who's still running this?" Park asked. Elena didn't hesitate. "General Vincent Raddick, in his inner ring from Omega Protocol." Connor looked up from the files. "Raddick's retired." "No," Elena said flatly. "He disappeared 6 months after the Kandahar mission collapsed. He was reassigned, unofficially. He runs the Blacknet through proxies now. Private defense firms, cybersecurity firms. But make no mistake, he's still pulling strings." At that exact moment, in a dim office 3 miles from the Capitol, General Raddick stood before a glowing screen, reading a security breach report. Flagged red. Emblem identified JFK Terminal 4. Subject: Elena Morris. Content unsealed. His jaw clenched. He picked up a secure phone. "Activate response protocol," he said coldly. "Find her. Contain the leak." His aide, a man in a gray suit with no name tag, hesitated. "Sir, she's already inside congressional oversight." "Then shut it down, quietly, before she opens her mouth to the wrong committee." Back in the Capitol Annex, Park turned away from the laptop, shaking her head. "We need to bring this to the full committee tomorrow morning." "No," Elena said. Quickly. "You can't." Park raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? You bring this to the full room, it leaks. You don't know who's clean anymore." Eon was buried because people inside the oversight mechanism were in on it. This data doesn't just expose programs, it exposes names. And some of them might be sitting in your seats. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Marlowe stepped forward, his voice quiet. "So what's the plan? Because after this morning, there's no putting this back in the box." Elena took a breath. "There's one more file, one that isn't on the drive." Connor looked confused. "What do you mean?" She glanced toward the wall clock. "In 12 hours, Heron will trigger a timed release if I don't confirm I'm safe. That release will push the remaining archive to journalists overseas. We never trusted the U.S. press to survive a breach like this without interference." Park paled. "You're saying there's more?" Elena nodded. "This is just the outline. The full blueprint, the source code for the Eon system, the logs of every surveillance target since 2010. That's what he has. And if anything happens to either of us, it goes public. Worldwide." Marlowe looked at Park. "You need to protect her. Get her into federal custody someplace clean." Park hesitated, then picked up her phone. "I'll call Justice." But Elena's eyes flicked toward the window. A black sedan had just pulled up across the street. The driver didn't get out. A second later, the building's Wi-Fi dropped. She stood. "They're already here." Connor moved toward the door. "We need to move, now." Park stood to her, voice tight. "To where?" Elena reached for the emblem and slipped it back into her coat. Her expression was steel. "To the only man who can finish what we started." The rain was heavy and relentless outside the small cabin perched on the Oregon coast. The sound of waves crashing against the jagged shoreline mingled with the rhythmic tapping of a keyboard inside. The room was cluttered, old maps pinned on walls, stacks of printed documents, and a flickering monitor displaying lines of code streaming in real time. Michael Heron sat hunched over the keyboard, fingers flying. His beard was peppered with gray, his eyes tired but sharp. He paused, scanning an incoming alert on his encrypted comm channel. The message was brief. "Skies not clear. Clouds incoming." His jaw tightened. Heron had lived off the grid for years, disappearing after the explosion that had supposedly ended his life. But the truth was darker. The mission to bury the Blacknet had only been delayed, not destroyed. Elena's reemergence had forced his hand. He stood and walked over to the small window, staring out at the stormy sea. Time to finish it, he muttered across the country. Elena and the agents moved through darkened corridors beneath Capitol Hill, security at every turn tightening like a noose. Every step toward the safe room felt heavier. Elena knew that once the files were fully exposed, powerful forces would try to stop them by any means necessary. Agent Marlowe glanced at her. "You sure about this?" "Once we start, there's no going back." Elena nodded. "I have to trust Heron." They reached a small conference room where Park and Hammond waited, eyes strained but resolute. The encrypted drive sat in the laptop's port, data flowing rapidly. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The building's secure communications buzzed with interference. Phones went dead. Park's face went pale. "They're jamming us," she whispered. "They know." Elena's phone vibrated. A text from Heron. "Initiate Plan B extraction needed." Marlowe's eyes narrowed. "We need to get you somewhere safe." "No," Elena said. "Not safe. Prepared." Prepared meant one thing: confronting the root of the corruption. The agents moved swiftly, evacuating the committee members as Elena and Connor prepared to leave with the drive. Outside, rain hammered the streets. A black SUV waited, engine running, windows tinted as Elena stepped toward the vehicle. A figure emerged from the shadows. A man in a long coat, face obscured by a hood. "Stop," the man commanded. Elena froze. Recognition sparked instantly, a ghost from her past. "General Radek," she said quietly. He stepped forward, eyes cold as ice. "You should have stayed hidden. And you should have stayed retired." The standoff was tense. Agents raised weapons. Radek smirked. "You don't understand what's at stake. This goes beyond government leaks. This is about national survival." Connor scoffed. "At the cost of liberty?" Radek's smirk faded. "It's about control. Without it, everything falls apart." Elena met his gaze. "Your control has already destroyed lives." A sudden noise, a shot, fired in the distance, sent everyone ducking. Chaos erupted in the confusion. Elena slipped past Radek and his men, disappearing into the stormy night with Connor close behind. Minutes later, in a hidden safe house illuminated by flickering candlelight, Elena and Heron faced each other for the first time in over a decade. The emblem glistened between them, a symbol of a mission that had never truly ended. "We have to finish this," Heron said grimly, "before they silence us for good." Elena nodded. No more running. The storm outside raged on, but inside, a new resolve burned brighter than ever. The early morning sun broke weakly through thick clouds over Washington, D.C., as the city stirred awake to a storm far louder than the weather. Elena Morris sat quietly in a secure witness protection safe house, the silver emblem resting on a wooden table before her, a small, shining relic that had ignited a firestorm. The news was everywhere. Headlines flooded every screen, every device. Classified surveillance scandal rocks the nation. Whistleblower unveils covert domestic spying. Government accountability questioned as secrets emerge. The emblem, once hidden in the shadows of history, was now a symbol emblazoned on news stickers and plastered across front pages. In the halls of Congress, the fallout was immediate. Emergency hearings convened. Oversight committees grilled top officials. Some resigned in disgrace. Others disappeared from public view. The government scrambled to regain control of the narrative, but the truth had already slipped through the cracks. Elena watched it all unfold with a bittersweet satisfaction. The man who had given her the emblem, Commander Rourke, had died believing his mission was lost. Michael Heron had risked everything to make sure the archives survived. And now, their sacrifices were not in vain. Her phone buzzed softly. A secure message from Heron. "They're trying to discredit us. Stay sharp." She smiled faintly and replied, "Truth doesn't disappear." But freedom had a price. Elena knew that. She wasn't naive. The threats were real. The people who wanted silence would never stop hunting her. But she was ready. The emblem had become more than a piece of metal. It was a testament to courage, to defiance, to the power of one person to stand against a system built on secrecy. Months passed. Elena was granted limited immunity under a special federal program designed to protect whistleblowers of exceptional significance. She remained under guard, but was allowed to speak openly at select forums and conferences, advocating government transparency. The emblem found a new home, a museum exhibit dedicated to unsung heroes and the sacrifices made in the name of truth. Visitors paused before the polished silver, reading the plaque beneath it. It told a story not just of a covert unit, but of the courage to expose darkness, no matter the cost. One afternoon, as Elena walked through the exhibit quietly, she spotted a young woman staring at the emblem. Their eyes met briefly. The woman smiled softly and nodded, a silent thank you. Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The past would always haunt her, but the future was hers to shape. In the world's eyes, she was a whistleblower, a traitor, a hero, and everything in between. But to Elena, she was simply someone who had dared to carry a heavy truth and refused to let it be buried again. And as the emblem caught the light one last time, shining with a quiet brilliance, Elena knew the story was far from over.